What if I told you that Nazi Germany was just months away from deploying weapons so advanced, so terrifying, that they could have completely changed the outcome of World War II? What if the Third Reich had access to technology that was decades ahead of anything the Allies possessed? And what if some of these weapons were so secret that we're only discovering the truth about them now, nearly 80 years after the war ended? This isn't science fiction. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history about Nazi Germany's Wunderwaffe program, their wonder weapons that pushed the boundaries between reality and what seemed impossible. From jet fighters that flew faster than sound to rockets that could reach space, from chemical weapons that could kill entire armies, to mysterious devices that some claim could manipulate gravity itself. The Nazi war machine didn't lose because they lacked advanced technology. They lost despite having the most advanced military technology in the world. And if Hitler had made different decisions, if certain projects had been prioritized earlier, or if the war had lasted just a few months longer, you might be living in a very different world today. Let's start with what everyone knows, the V-2 rocket. By 1944, Nazi Germany was launching ballistic missiles that could travel over 200 miles and strike targets with devastating accuracy. But here's what most people don't know. The V-2 wasn't just a weapon. It was the world's first spacecraft. These rockets regularly reached altitudes of over 100 miles, technically entering space 23 years before the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. The man behind the V-2 was Wernher von Braun, and he wasn't just thinking about bombing London. Von Braun had plans for multi-stage rockets that could reach the United States. He had designs for orbital satellites that could rain down projectiles from space. He even had blueprints for a manned space station that would serve as a platform for launching attacks anywhere on Earth. The Americans didn't develop similar technology until the 1960s, and they did it using von Braun himself, who they secretly brought to America after the war. But the V-2 was primitive compared to what the Nazis were working on next. They had plans for the A9-A10 America rocket, a two-stage intercontinental ballistic missile that could reach New York City from launch sites in Europe. The A10 first stage was essentially a giant V-2 designed to boost the smaller A9 to tremendous speeds. The A9 itself was a winged rocket that could glide to its target like an early cruise missile. If the war had continued into 1946, Nazi Germany could have been launching nuclear weapons at American cities from European soil. Because yes, they were working on nuclear weapons too. Most people think the Manhattan Project was a race between the United States and Soviet Union. It wasn't. It was a race between the United States and Nazi Germany, and the Nazis had a significant head start. German scientists had discovered nuclear fission in 1938, 2 years before the Americans even began serious research. Werner Heisenberg, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, was leading the German atomic program. The Nazis had access to heavy water from occupied Norway, uranium from occupied Czechoslovakia, and some of the world's most brilliant physicists. They built multiple research reactors and came much closer to creating a functioning atomic bomb than most people realize. In fact, some historians argue that they actually succeeded in testing a small nuclear device in March 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender. But here's where the story gets really interesting. The Nazis weren't just trying to build conventional atomic bombs. They were experimenting with weapons that wouldn't be developed by other countries for decades. They had designs for what they called uranium machines, essentially dirty bombs that could contaminate entire cities with radioactive material. They were working on atomic rockets that could destroy whole armies with a single warhead. They even had theoretical plans for hydrogen bombs, weapons so powerful that the United States didn't successfully test one until 1952. The scariest part isn't what they built. It's what they almost built. In underground facilities across Germany and occupied Europe, Nazi scientists were working on projects that seemed to come straight out of science fiction. Take the Silbervogel, or Silverbird, a rocket-powered aircraft that could skip across the upper atmosphere like a stone skipping across water. This wasn't just a bomber. This was a suborbital spacecraft designed to attack targets anywhere in the world. The Silbervogel would be launched vertically like a rocket, then glide through space at speeds of over 13,000 miles per hour before diving, down to attack its target and landing at a friendly base on the other side of the world. The pilot would experience weightlessness, see the curvature of the Earth, and travel from Europe to Japan in less than an hour. This was 1944, and they were designing something that looks like a primitive space shuttle. But even the Silbervogel pales in comparison to some of the more mysterious Nazi projects. In underground facilities in Poland and Czechoslovakia, scientists were working on something called Die Glock, the bell. According to recovered documents and witness testimony, this was a metallic device about 12 feet wide and 15 feet high that created some kind of unknown energy field. The bell allegedly used a substance called Zerum 525, which may have been red mercury, a theoretical exotic matter that could theoretically be used for advanced nuclear weapons or even anti-gravity devices. Test subjects, including plants, animals, and reportedly some humans, were exposed to the bell's energy field. Most died within hours from symptoms that resembled severe radiation poisoning, but with unusual tissue damage that doctors had never seen before. What was the bell supposed to do? Nobody knows for certain. Some witnesses claimed it was an anti-gravity device that could make objects levitate. Others suggested it was a time machine or a weapon that could age targets to death in seconds. The truth is probably more mundane. It was likely an experimental nuclear reactor or particle accelerator. But the fact that we're still not sure what it was tells you how advanced and secretive Nazi weapons research had become. And that's just what we know about. How many other projects were destroyed when Germany surrendered? How many scientists took their secrets to the grave? How many facilities were overrun so quickly that their contents were never properly catalogued? Consider the Nazis' jet aircraft program. While the Allies were still flying propeller-driven fighters, the Luftwaffe was deploying jets that were 50 miles per hour faster than anything else in the sky. The Messerschmitt Me-262 wasn't just the world's first operational jet fighter. It was practically invincible in air-to-air combat when it was working properly. But the Me-262 was just the beginning. The Nazis had blueprints for swept-wing jets that wouldn't appear in American or Soviet air forces for years. They were working on vertical takeoff aircraft, supersonic fighters, and even jet-powered flying wings that were essentially primitive stealth bombers. The Horten Ho 229 flying wing was designed to be nearly invisible to radar, using materials and techniques that wouldn't be perfected by other countries until the 1980s. If Hitler had prioritized jet aircraft production instead of conventional fighters, the Luftwaffe could have maintained air superiority over Germany throughout 1944 and 1945. Allied bombers would have been sitting ducks against jets flying twice as fast as their escort fighters. The Nazis were also working on guided missiles that make modern cruise missiles look primitive. The Fritz X was a radio-controlled bomb that could be dropped from high altitude and guided precisely to its target. It successfully sank several Allied warships, including the Italian battleship Roma. But the Fritz X was just a proof of concept. German scientists were developing missiles with television cameras in their noses, allowing operators to see exactly what they were attacking. They had heat-seeking missiles that could track enemy aircraft automatically. They were even working on missiles with primitive artificial intelligence that could identify and attack specific types of targets without human control. Imagine if these weapons had been available in large numbers during the Battle of Britain or the Allied invasion of Normandy. Imagine if Nazi Germany had been able to shoot down Allied aircraft with the same accuracy that modern military forces can target enemy planes today. But perhaps the most terrifying Nazi secret weapons weren't technological. They were biological and chemical. While the Geneva Convention prohibited the use of chemical weapons, Nazi Germany had developed nerve agents so deadly that a single drop on the skin could kill a grown man in minutes. Tabun, sarin, and soman were chemical weapons decades ahead of anything the Allies possessed. The Nazis produced thousands of tons of these chemical weapons but never used them in combat. Why? Not because of moral considerations, but because they assumed the Allies had similar weapons and would retaliate in kind. It was mutually assured destruction. Decades before the nuclear age made that concept famous. The biological weapons program was even more sinister. Nazi scientists were experimenting with weaponized anthrax, plague, and other diseases that could kill millions of people. They were working on ways to contaminate water supplies, destroy crops, and spread disease through insect vectors. Some of these experiments were conducted on prisoners in concentration camps, combining the horrors of the Holocaust with the development of weapons of mass destruction. But the most advanced Nazi secret weapon wasn't a bomb or a rocket or a poison. It was their encryption technology. The Enigma machine is famous because the Allies broke its code, but the Nazis had more advanced encryption devices that were never cracked. The Lorenz cipher, used for high-level strategic communications, wasn't broken until after the war ended. More importantly, Nazi Germany was developing the world's first electronic computers, specifically for military applications. The Z3, built by Konrad Zuse in 1941, was the world's first fully functional digital computer, 3 years before similar machines appeared in Britain or America. The Nazis were using these computers for ballistics calculations, aerodynamic modeling, and code breaking. If the war had continued, Nazi Germany might have developed computer-guided weapons, automated defense systems, and electronic warfare capabilities that wouldn't appear in other militaries for decades. They might have broken Allied codes while keeping their own communications completely secure. So why didn't these wonder weapons save the Third Reich? The answer is timing, resources, and leadership. Many of these projects were started too late in the war to make a difference. The Nazi economy was focused on producing massive quantities of conventional weapons rather than small numbers of advanced weapons, and Hitler himself often interfered with weapons development, demanding changes that delayed or derailed promising projects. The Me-262 jet fighter could have been operational 2 years earlier, but Hitler insisted it be modified as a bomber instead of a fighter. The V-2 rocket consumed enormous resources that could have been used to build thousands of conventional aircraft. Nuclear weapons research was fragmented across multiple competing programs instead of being concentrated in a single Manhattan Project-style effort. Most critically, Nazi Germany was running out of time, resources, and trained personnel. The most advanced weapons in the world don't matter if you don't have the fuel to operate them, the pilots to fly them, or the factories to build them in meaningful numbers. By 1945, Germany was desperately short of everything except innovative technology. But what happened to all these wonder weapons after the war ended? This is where the story becomes even more interesting. The United States, Soviet Union, Britain, and France launched competing operations to capture Nazi scientists, research data, and prototype weapons. Operation Paperclip brought over 1,600 German scientists and engineers to America, including Werner von Braun and most of the rocket team that would later put Americans on the moon. The Soviets were even more aggressive, essentially kidnapping entire research teams and relocating them to secret facilities in the Soviet Union. Many of the scientists who worked on Nazi wonder weapons spent the early years of the Cold War developing similar weapons for their former enemies. The jet engines that powered early American and Soviet military aircraft were based on captured German designs. The first American and Soviet ballistic missiles were essentially improved V-2 rockets. Even the NASA Saturn V rocket that carried Apollo astronauts to the moon used design principles developed for Hitler's planned attacks on New York City. Some Nazi secret weapons were so advanced that they weren't fully understood or replicated for decades. Stealth technology, jet aircraft design, guided missiles, computer technology, and even early research into nuclear fusion all have roots in German wartime research programs. But here's the most unsettling part of this story. We still don't know everything. Thousands of Nazi research documents were destroyed or lost during the chaotic final months of World War II. Entire underground research facilities were sealed or flooded, their contents never recovered. Some of the most brilliant Nazi scientists died before they could be interrogated about their work. There are persistent rumors about Nazi research into anti-gravity, time travel, and exotic energy sources. While most of these stories are probably fictional, They persist because we know that Nazi scientists were working on projects so advanced and so secret that even today, we're not sure what they accomplished. What we do know is that Nazi Germany came frighteningly close to developing weapons that could have changed the outcome of World War II. If the war had lasted just a few more months, if Hitler had made different strategic decisions, or if Nazi scientists had solved certain technical problems just a little bit earlier, history could have been very different. The Nazi Wunderwaffes program represents both the incredible potential and the terrible dangers of advanced military technology. These weapons were developed by some of the most brilliant scientists in human history, but they were developed in service of one of the most evil regimes in human history. The same technological innovation that could have sent humans to the stars was instead focused on finding more efficient ways to kill people. This is why the story of Nazi secret weapons matters today. It's not just historical curiosity about advanced technology. It's a reminder that scientific innovation without moral guidance can lead to weapons so terrible that they threaten the survival of human civilization itself. The Nazis didn't lose because they lacked advanced technology. They lost despite having access to technology that was decades ahead of its time. And that's a lesson that remains relevant in our age of artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, and weapon systems that can operate without human control. The most advanced technology in the world is only as moral as the people who control it. Nazi Germany had Wunderwaffes, but they also had a regime that was willing to use any weapon, no matter how terrible, to achieve its goals. The real wonder isn't that Nazi Germany developed such advanced weapons. The real wonder is that these weapons weren't enough to save them from the consequences of their own evil. Technology alone doesn't determine the outcome of wars. Values, leadership, strategy, and the will of free people to resist tyranny matter more than the most advanced weapons ever conceived.